Hello and welcome to the tutorial on how to create your own brimagine signatures, your own characters, your own abilities, all of the good things. On screen you will see the template for your brimagine signatures. It's got all the basic descriptors you'll need on there, and we're going to be going through them one by one with some prompts, and I'll be teaching you how to best implement each of these parts to create your signatures. My main character is going to be based on a drawing I did. You can see it here on screen. It's of a hermit crab with a snail shell. You can make your main character just a regular human being or irregular human being. But I'm going for an animal. My hermit crab's name is going to be Armand, as in armor. When it comes to this part, for just like when you're thinking about your main character to begin with, you might want to think about what do they look like. You know, if you were describing this person to someone in a match, what would be important to say? Of course, you can use drawings, or you can model your main character if you felt so inclined. But a short written description is all that's required. Mine is going to be this hermit crab is going to be an old hermit crab living inside of a fossilized snail shell. You don't get any minus points for bad spelling and things in this game, thankfully. The next part you need is a goal, what's called your ideal goal. You technically don't need to be using this goal in every single match that you play, but having this goal will help you create your abilities around and create your whole signature's identity and playstyle around. Because if they're working towards driving across the planet, and your signatures are primed towards running a business empire, then those signatures might not play particularly well together. So for Armand's goal, I'm going to be having him reach a safe place, I think. The safe place is going to be an enemy cave. He's going to be trying to escape stingrays, or manta rays actually, because I vaguely recollect watching manta rays chase crabs. I don't think it was hermit crabs, but it was crabs. We can pretend that these anemones don't sting the crabs, but they sting the manta rays. So my crab Armand will be safe there. Next comes probably the most fun part of creating your signatures, or the most interesting, is their ability. Your primary signature's ability is the one you're going to be, most focused around, likely. So it's got to be something that's very useful for them. My hermit crab lives in a shell, in a snail shell. In the written rules, there are these things called conditional abilities, which can activate on your opponent's turns if they meet certain conditions. So I think I'm going to use one of those, because I can have it so if Armand is hiding in his snail shell at the end of my turn, then when my opponent's turn comes around and someone tries to attack him, like if they get one of the manta rays to attack Armand, he can shoot at one of his pincers and make it so they don't want to attack him anymore. I think that would be quite useful. So your guiding principle makes your character who they are, kind of a rule that they have to follow that gives them their personality and character. And I have a hermit crab, and one thing that hermit crabs like to do when their shell gets too small for them, the shell that they've adopted, is they look for a bigger shell. So I think if Armand sees a shell, then he has to come out of his snail shell, his fossilized snail shell, and he has to try on the other shell. He doesn't have to take it, but he has to at least try it on, which could give my opponent the opportunity to trap the shell, maybe. Helps give your character more life and also gives your opponent more opportunities against you, which makes the game more interesting, but also makes it like you can predict maybe how your opponent is going to attack you. Now that we've finished with our primary signature, we move on to our secondary signature. This is a person or tool that will be helpful to your main character in completing their goal. And what I think I might do is I'll make the shell, the fossilized snail shell, separate to Armand, so it can have its own ability. Armand can have his Defender's Strike, where he uses his pincer to ward off his enemies, and the shell can just be its own thing. We have two prompts on screen here because your secondary ability can go in two sort of directions when you're thinking about things. It can either help your main character do something they can't do by themselves, or it can just be adding to the things your main character can already do. The shell, I think, its purpose should just be obvious. It should just be protecting Armand from attacks, so he doesn't take any damage. So when he's attacked, he can do his strike. But without the shell, if he didn't have the shell, my opponent could argue that while they are warded off by my ability's attack, they could still do damage during the initial attack. Armand uses his pincer, but then like the attacker like rips off that pincer or something. But if the shell has an ability to just protect against all attacks from the sides and the top to make it fair, then my opponents won't be able to argue that. But we're leaving like underneath the shell vulnerable, so you could have some kind of sandworm signature that would be good against this character. The last big decision you need to make about your signatures is your signature weakness. You may be like, oh, do I really have to do this part? Like, intentionally give my signatures a weakness? But what the signature weakness is it's an interesting problem that your abilities have to work around. Say you just had a goal, like my hermit crab does, of getting from point A to point B, getting from somewhere in the sea to this anemone cave. Then I could just go there and do that, and there wouldn't be much of a threat because my abilities are making the hermit crab so secure and so defended. What the signature weakness is, it's going to give you a little bit more to do in your story, a little bit more to think about, which makes when you do complete your goal, it feels more rewarding, it feels more meaningful. So my hermit crab signature weakness is going to be it has to stay on the seafloor because its shell is so heavy and because it feels most safe on the seafloor, so it doesn't want to go anywhere else. Plus, it can only walk sideways and it has to turn in place. And that will give, just a bit more for my opponent to work with and a bit more for me to think about. Final thing, you get to give your signatures a title, a name that will strike fear into your opponent's hearts. I think I'm going to go for Fossil Armor. I have all my signatures together, and I'm ready to play. You can see all of them on screen here. I hope this was useful and that you decide to make your own signatures. Thank you for watching, and have fun playing.